Welcome to our channel, Absorbent Mind Montessori Parenting, where we talk about parenting and Montessori philosophy and our experiences and what we know. All right, today, what are we talking about?
I think we're talking about books.
Books. We're going to talk about 5 things that we think about when purchasing board books for our baby.
Number 1.
Number 1. Is reality-based. Do you know why that is or what your thoughts are on that?
This is the thing. This is the thing where we don't want to confuse them about what's real and what's not, and so having talking frogs is going to confuse them.
It's related to a very recent specific experience
Yes.
where our baby met a Kermit puppet.
And thought it was the most amazing thing.
Yeah. So this is a thing that I feel like the Montessori community gets a lot of flack for, that people don't really get, because we all love magic, right? We all love the wonder of childhood. And so I think there's some space to clarify.
Okay.
When we're talking about reality-based, we're specifically talking about kids in the first plane. The first plane, so kids under 6 who don't have the ability to differentiate between reality and fantasy, and who just trust us implicitly. If you tell your child that in Africa there are giraffes with purple spots, they'll believe you.
If you tell your child that Santa Claus exists, they'll believe you.
They'll believe you. And
which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, sometimes that's fun and
fun.
Magical, and sometimes it's...
Sometimes you're 12 years old and you still believe in Santa Claus.
Sometimes you're misleading your child, and more than anything, particularly right now, under a year old, everything is new and everything is magical. And so there's not really a need to introduce elements of fantasy when there is so much information to learn about the world. Imaginative play, obviously we'll be there earlier than 5 years old, but really getting into fantastical worlds and building worlds and exploring the edges of our reality is something that is just as exciting to do with a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old as it is with a toddler. In fact, it's more exciting because you get to watch them do the world building as opposed to just presenting this false reality to a child. So we're not saying never. We're just saying not right now. And even not right now, not never. You know, we had this
Even not right now, not never.
Sometimes it's fun, like you said.
Yeah.
We'll probably introduce Santa, we'll probably introduce the Easter Bunny, and Kermit the talking frog puppet is really fun, and you can have conversations to differentiate.
Yeah.
But most of the books we get are reality-based, because there's a lot for her to learn.
Some of our books highlight various different cultures around the world. It's, I think, much more productive to talk to them about what's important to each of those individual cultures and how that makes up the beautiful world we live in, versus like what language the frog might speak.
Yeah. So you're segueing into two separate points for things we. That's okay. I think it's a good time for us to segue.
Okay.
So number two.
Number 2.
For stories that are relevant to her experiences.
Oh, okay.
So we have a couple books about dogs because she has a pet dog. We are about to start solids, so we've been reading several books about food. Books are a really valuable tool for processing experiences, both in preparing for them and in the aftermath. And sometimes you don't have the language to think about how you experience something, how it felt, particularly if you're a child, an infant. And sometimes you just need the setting, the forum to do that. And so having books that are relevant to what's happening in her life or what's about to happen in her life, like you said, opens up the opportunity for discussions that she can practically apply, both in terms of her learning language and in terms of organizing information in her brain and processing, like, both emotionally and intellectually, the experiences that she's having.
Yeah. We've talked about when we travel, getting books that are reflective of the terrain or the culture that we're going to experience in the place that we're at. And so if we're going to travel to Panama, getting our books about the Panama Canal and the culture there and why all of that exists will help fill her head with knowledge and questions for when we get to Panama.
And even on like a much simpler level, and I think most people do this, but books about the seasons. You know, this is the first time she's experiencing spring. And it will be the first time she's experiencing summer. And so talking about the weather and how the seasons shift and change and why the seasons shift and change is information that she, like I said, she can use that to organize. Oh, I went outside and it was rainy. I read a book about how it's rainy. Okay, it gets rainy in the spring in the Northern Hemisphere.
Number three
is developmentally appropriate. And this is, I think, especially tricky with board books because board books give the implication that they are designed for infants, right? Designed for toddlers. But a lot of times when you open up a board book, it is not. There's a couple of different things that happen. One is sometimes they just reprint a picture book in a board book format. And then it seems to be that right now it's really trendy for adults to take high-level concepts and put them into board books, which isn't inherently bad, but often they don't break down the language or the concept into a format that's consumable for children. That's what we're looking for is books that present concepts in a way that's actually somewhat digestible to her. I mean, her language capacity at 5 months old is still pretty limited, but that's also part of it is having rich language, but also simple language, and not simple in this fact that like the words themselves are simple, but the number of words, the syntax, like we like a good rhyme scheme, a couple of words a page is plenty to introduce her to new language and leaves the door open for dynamic engagement. And that's the real issue with those text-heavy board books, is if we're just sitting there like reading all the words, she doesn't have an opportunity to jump in and say, or what's that mean? Point at the picture, really participate in the process. A hack, I think, on this is a lot of times I will check out a book from the library digitally to skim through it before buying it so that I can see what it is. If it's not available at the library, I'll go to Amazon. I won't buy it from Amazon, but I'll go to Amazon and preview. Because usually with kids' books, they're short enough that you can see a couple pages and kind of get a sense for how simple or complicated it is.
Number four.
Books that are enjoyable for the adult to read.
Yeah, that is a big one.
Yeah. And
some of the board books that we've been through have been not great. And it's partly because board books are intentionally simple. Sometimes they don't have words, which is fine. I think it's totally fine for it to not have words, but it still needs to have something that engages you as the adult. It needs to be fun. And
yes.
Every now and then they're just not fun.
Yes.
They're like little baby book reports.
Yeah, and it needs to be fun for a reason. Not just like because we care about you, the adult. We do. But because if you're not into it, your kid won't be into it,
Yeah.
right? If you're passively, blandly engaging in the experience, they will pick up on that and think that it's boring. But if you are having fun with the rhyme scheme or the pictures or the information, they will also enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think this was particularly relevant for high contrast black and white books for newborns. We found a handful that are dynamic enough that they're enjoyable for the adult as much as the child. And we will attach a bookshop link to this video so you can look at all of our favorite books. But don't force yourself to read books that aren't fun for you, because your kid won't enjoy it, even if you don't enjoy it. At least when they're little babies. When they're older, that's between the two of you. Number 5. Books that reflect the diversity of the human experience. We want things that are relevant to her life experience, but we also want her to be a kind, thoughtful, empathetic person, and some of that is just going to be her doing, but some of it is our responsibility to expose her to other people's experiences. And so starting out simple by just having the baseline rule that books have diversity within the representation of characters. So we make sure that there are characters of color, we make sure there are characters of different abilities, we make sure that different family structures are included. As she gets older, and not much older, like just verbal, experiencing more complicated topics about marginalization and oppression and how people are treated differently based on their identities, and fun stuff too, you know, different holidays that people celebrate, different cultural elements, but making sure that as much of the human experience is reflected in her bookcase as possible.
Yeah. We had an experience where we took a young relative to an Asian market and that child had not been prepared for that environment, which led to some inappropriate commentary that we had to talk through. And so, you know, just always building in cultural competency, I think, is important, because it, I think, lessens the burden of those learning opportunities later.
A lot of those lessons have to be learned through lived experience, often in a hard way. But as much as we can prepare her to be empathetic and know the differences and experiences people have, I think the better.
And to expect different experiences.
Okay,
That's good.
That's all 5 things.
That's it?
Do you have anything that you want to add when you think about books?
The only thing that I would add is not just should the books be fun, but it's important to make them fun. And
how you read it is
she agrees. How you read it is important. And, you know, like with some of our younger relatives, putting on a funny voice and giving all the characters different voices was important to their experience of staying engaged. And so even though she's only just beginning to understand that language exists, we still try and be silly and make the books fun and lean into the rhyming schemes and all that.
Those are the 5 things we consider when looking at board books. We'd love to know what you keep in mind, what your favorite board books are, and if there's anything we mentioned that you don't agree with. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, check out our Instagram, ring that bell if you feel so compelled.
She would like you to ring the bell as she tries to fit this entire rattle into her mouth.
Thanks for watching.